Hey, I'm going to get us started. Welcome to Embracing Nature, Integrating Outdoor Learning Principles into Education. My name is Sarah Coles, and I am the Executive Director of the Texas Children in Nature Network. We're excited to have you with us today. We are recording our session today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please mute yourselves and turn off your cameras for the presentation to save bandwidth for all of our attendees and for a clean recording. I will be monitoring the chat so you can share your questions there, and I will share them with the presenters. Please remember to keep your comments in the chat kind. Courtney is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Courtney. As I said, we're recording today's session, and I'll share it in a follow-up email in a few days. If you're uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Courtney with your name for our attendance. Also, if your Zoom name doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or let Courtney know. If you need a certificate and we don't have your name, we won't be able to provide a certificate. And just a reminder, if you are needing a certificate, you'll need to follow those directions that were in the Zoom link email. Now go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. And in just a moment, I'm going to put some links about land acknowledgements and those people groups in the chat. And now I'd like to go ahead and welcome our speaker today, Emily Smith. She's with the Nature School at Cibolo Conservation. Thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. As Sarah said, I'm Emily Smith and I work at the Nest Nature School in Boerne, Texas. We are part of the Cibolo Center for Conservation. Yeah, this presentation is called Embracing Nature, Integrating Outdoor Learning Principles into Education. So we're just going to jump right in today. Um, I'm Emily Smith. Just a little bit of background about me, kind of what my qualifications are. I have a bachelor's in early childhood education with a minor in psychology both from Grand Canyon University, and I received my teaching license in the state of Arizona prior to moving to Texas. I'm also a TechPed certified trainer, and I also have a nature-based teaching certification through the Association for Nature-Based Education. I started my teaching career in public schools, and for many, many years, found myself very quickly very frustrated and burnt out very fast. I was spending 12-hour days at school and I was planning and prepping, and I still wasn't prepared for the day ahead. And I was just frustrated, even though I knew teaching was where my heart and my passion was. And one of my last years in public schools is when I met Amanda McMickle, and she introduced me to nature-based education, and kind of got me started down that road. And it, not to be dramatic, but it really changed my life in the world of teaching. And so that's kind of what brought me to nature-based education and then learning, getting my certification in that realm, and just seeing how much better children learn outdoors and when they have the freedom to explore and to have play. It's something that we're taught in teacher school all the time, but then you enter the real world of teaching and it's like everything they throw at you is the exact opposite of that. So that's kind of my purpose behind nature, wanting to be a part of nature-based education. I believe children should be allowed to learn in, with, and about nature, and that it provides them the greatest amount of benefit. I do work for the Nest Nature School. Our three foundational truths are strong bodies, inquisitive minds, and wild hearts. Strong bodies, we believe that healthy children should have daily opportunity to cultivate strength, confidence, and self-awareness.
Hey,
We bel-
Emily,
Yes.
just real quick, we can still see the pop-up that says audience window, and we can't see behind it.
Oh. Thank you. Let me see.
Maybe click the enter full screen mode.
Um, Wait.
There's a little X beside the window as well that might just make it disappear.
Do you see?
Now we can see
Nope,
your agenda, but you're in like the main Canva,
the
not
main
the
thing. Okay.
present.
So sorry about that. Um,
And then click the little X maybe.
okay, do you see?
No, we still see the pop-up.
Hmm. Okay, that's all right. I can do this without this mode.
Sarah, is it on your side? Because it says audience.
No, it's on Emily's side. I can't do anything with it.
Let me try. So sorry. Let me stop sharing real quick and try that again. Ah, this should be it. Okay. Do you see
There
those
we
now?
go. Got it.
Perfect. Okay, and you still see it?
Now it says click to exit full screen.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, I'll
I
try one more
got it.
time and then I'll just hop into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I also have it pulled up, so if you can't get it, I can maybe try it to share for you.
Okay. Um, okay, would you mind trying that? And then if not,
Yeah.
I'll just move on.
I just need you to stop sharing.
Okay, yes.
Okay. All right. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And there's no
Oh,
pop-up?
no, there is not. Let me get my side.
Let me know when you're ready for me to advance the slides.
Okay. Okay, yes, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Yes, the Nest Nature School. Perfect. Sorry about that, guys, but thank you for your patience. Okay, yes. So at the Nest Nature School, we believe in three foundational truths. Strong bodies, believing that healthy children should have daily opportunity to cultivate strength, confidence, and self-awareness. Inquisitive minds, educators should support academic, social, and emotional goals using experiences in and with nature. And wild hearts. The environment should nurture a sense of wonder, empathy, and understanding of the natural world. We do spend 75% of our day outside, and 100% of our day is spent learning with and about nature. Next slide. So this is our agenda, kind of briefly what we're going to go talk through today. We're going to talk about objectives, get to know you guys a little bit if you want to participate, talk about what you remember about playing outside, diving into the research, what the research has to say. Then we're going to identify what I've considered the 6 core principles, and then evaluate the incorporation of risky play. And then we'll have some time at the end for a reflection. And if you guys brought any materials to work with, we'll do that at the end as well. Next slide. So these are the things that I hope you can walk away from this session with, able to identify what the core principles of nature-based education are and how they are important for nature play and how we can integrate them into traditional school settings or outdoor school settings, and then able to inspire students to become environmental stewards and lifelong learners. Next slide. Okay, so I wanted to start out with this quote. It says, nature play is when children are provided with the opportunity to engage in unstructured play activities in outdoor settings where there are natural elements such as logs, rocks, water, as opposed to conventional manufactured play equipment. And the word unstructured play is highlighted here. It's a core point of nature-based and play-based education is a lot of children these days are spending their time, they might be spending a lot of time outside, but they're in structured activities. They're playing sports. Um, they're doing work outside, that kind of thing. But we want to focus on the unstructured aspect and how valuable learning can be when children are allowed to just exist, which we often don't allow them the privilege of doing anymore. Um, when access to natural elements is limited, we wanted to dive into ways that we can still create an outdoor time that is unstructured. This is a question that we'll kind of evaluate as I go through these slides, because I know not everyone is able to have access to outdoor settings. So what ways can we still bring nature in or spend even a little bit of time outside? Okay, the next slide. Just a question. And you'll see in the slides that I shared with you guys, all the kids' faces are blurred out just since that's being shared with you. So as we move on, you'll see that moving forward. But what do you remember playing what do you remember about playing outside? For me, one of the things I remember growing up is obviously what everybody says. We didn't come home till the street lights came on. We played outside all day, all summer long. It was just spent outside. One of my favorite memories as a kid was I had several friends in the neighborhood that were my age, and there's this big slab of concrete, like two houses down from us, but you could still see it from my backyard, and it was kind of surrounded by bushes, and it's just a round slab, and for whatever reason, we had titled this the Loop-de-Loop. And so every day we would go hang out at the Loop-de-Loop. We'd pack a little lunch, we'd ride our scooters over there, and we'd hang out, and we felt like we were engrossed in our own little world. Like we were by ourselves and we were miles and miles from home, even though realistically my mom could see us from the back door, but it didn't feel that way. And kind of that freedom of being, okay, like we're on our own, we can have adventures, we can do things without oversight and interruption from adults saying you need to play this way or you need to play with that, or oh, be careful, don't do that. And that's kind of also an aspect of risky play is that kind of being able to get lost idea. If anyone is interested in sharing, I'd also love to hear if you guys have any short stories about what you guys did outside as kids or any memorable moments.
And folks can either put things in the chat and I'll read them, or if you want to take yourselves off mute, you can do that as well.
I feel like if I'm going to share, I should be off video too. That seems really weird, to speak to my black box. I remember my dad had well, I guess we had a wood pile in the backyard, and that was something we played with a lot, and it was really great because one day it might be a fort, the next day it, couldn't, I can't remember what else it was, but I knew it was always something different, which was cool because it was the same space and the same materials, but it just became something different every time. He did do some cleaning out though, just so we weren't like, finding snakes and whatever. But yeah, that's something we spent so much time and with neighbor kids coming over and we would just like reconstruct that all the time.
Mhm. The idea of loose parts and being able to really just come up with whatever can be anything can be anything. Thank you for sharing.
I'll share one as well. This is, I don't know if this may be construed as gross, but my friends and I were obsessed with Little House on the Prairie when we were little. And so we would collect, and like, especially at the beginning, they're talking about like collecting buffalo cookies for their fires. So we would collect clumps of dirt and like make piles of buffalo cookies in the neighborhood.
I love that. It sounds delicious. Thank you guys for sharing that. From what I was hearing, it sounds like there was a lot of messy play. And Courtney had also mentioned that, of course, your dad cleaned out the space, made sure it was safe. And I think that's also an important part to remember about playing outside and the unstructured play. We want kids to be able to freely explore, but we also have to do it safely. And there's nothing wrong with going through, checking a space, making sure there aren't snakes or scorpions, and then also teaching children how to keep an eye out for those things themselves. So one thing we talk about at the nest, especially right now with all the rain and the heat coming in, is scorpions. They love to hide under rocks. So when we pick up rocks, one of our safety expectations is if we pick up a rock, we're going to do it with our foot first or with a large stick rather than with our hands, and kind of setting that expectation, but also still allowing them the freedom to explore in whatever way they want. Next slide, if no one else has anything. So what does the research say about kids spending time outside? The number one thing that's obviously, is physical health. It grants kids vitamin D exposure and it lowers the risk of diabetes and heart disease. And we know in this day and age, those things are becoming more and more prevalent with younger and younger children. And so being outside is healthy in all aspects, really. It also promotes collaboration, both playing outside and in unstructured play. Children are able to solve conflicts. They build resilience. They learn that not everyone's going to think the same way that they do, but they can have conflict with each other, but they can solve it. And often when they do that without adult interference, that helps teach them how to do that themselves and have that independence rather than an adult stepping in every single time and saying, oh, you need to say sorry or you need to do this or this, but it's coming from them and it's more authentic. There's decreased stress and increased levels of mood regulating hormones when we spend time outside. Self-regulation, with the constant stimuli we see in TV shows all the time, but nature also has constant stimuli, but it's natural and it's not bright flashing colors constantly. It's not loud, go, 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 everything noisy. But if you sit outside, you're going to hear some birds chirping. Then you'll hear them stop. You'll hear another bird repeat back to them, or you'll hear a different sound. And even when you look at the clouds in the sky, the clouds are constantly moving, whether we can tell that they're moving unless we really focus or not. But they're still able to get like that constant stimuli that helps their brain development without being in front of a screen. And then respect for the environment. When children grow up outdoors, they develop a connection to it and they are more likely to care about nature and the earth when they have that personal connection to it versus, okay, I've never spent time outside. Well, what's the point of trees? What's the point of grass? I don't use that stuff. It doesn't benefit me, right? But when we're outside, we're like, okay, the trees, they provide oxygen. And I remember when I was a kid, I climbed on that tree. Wow, I want my kids to eventually climb trees too. What steps can I take to help um, promote tree growth, take care of them, plant them, things like that. The Seattle Children's Institute released a study, and it's one of the most shocking statistics that I have personally seen, that they found that children today spend 12.6 minutes on average outside on unstructured play. 12.6 minutes, not hours, not, well, better than seconds, but minutes. And they spend 10 and a half hours that they're awake relatively motionless. So that's 12 hours of active play versus 10 hours that they're awake, they're not sleeping, but they're motionless. They're sitting in a desk listening to a teacher. They're sitting in front of a TV. They're laying down. They're just not moving. And that's the bulk of their day. And I feel like anyone who's in nature-based education, we see that and we see the results of that in children that are unable to focus, children that might have more behavior problems because they're not moving. I know how much better I feel as an adult when I go on a walk, just a quick 5-minute walk, and my brain's fully developed versus a child whose brain is not fully developed. Now, how much better could that make their brain feel if they're able to get moving and get outside, even for just a few minutes? Um, and so what we want to promote is more active time spent outside. Next slide. One of my favorite things is that that can be done indoors can be brought outdoors with proper preparation. So you'll see some of the photos here of some of our nest students. This picture on the left is from their center time. So the way our classrooms, our cottages are set up is there's an outdoor picnic tables. And so instead of doing for our center time throughout the day, which is a normal, typical preschool activity, we take them outside. And so we set up those centers on the porch. So they're still doing the same activities they were going to do inside, but now we're just doing them outside. The little girl closest to us, she's working on, there's a pile of flowers there in the middle. And it was in the springtime, still cold, but in the springtime. And they were using hammers and we put a towel down on top of flowers and then underneath a piece of cardboard. And they were hammering the flowers and kind of getting to decorate and paint their piece of art with what came off of the flowers. And then we reused those pieces and they made little collages and they glued on the flower pieces. And then they used the rest of it in their little potion making that day and for several days because it lasted. Oh, and then in that next picture, you'll see, yes, just to the right, the group of kiddos playing cards on a picnic blanket. So when we go out on our hikes, I just brought a deck of cards with us and we took the picnic blanket and we all just sat out and played cards. Something that families will often do is play cards inside, but why not take it outside. The weather was nice. Thankfully, it wasn't windy because that could always be an issue. But again, just another example of something that is typically done inside, but we're doing it outside. Quickly on the other pictures, you'll see the little girl in the pink jacket. Her jacket is backwards and her hoodie's right in front. They were very into that at this phase. But we're working on sewing. And so we had little plastic child safe sewing needles, and they weren't really making anything, but that's not the point. The point was the process, not the product, right, of their art. And so again, we just took our picnic blanket on our hike and we did that activity outdoors. So we just had everything prepped and ready to go. And we're not worried about things getting dirty. We know that anything we take outside could get ripped, it could get lost, it could get dirty. So we make sure if we don't want those things to be that way, we just leave those inside and prepare for what we do want to be outside. Next slide. So outdoor provocations. Provocations should be child-led and allow children to challenge their beliefs and more deeply explore ideas and theories. And so provocations should be set up to allow students to freely explore, kind of guide them in a way. If you're learning about a certain topic, you can guide them in a direction, but then giving them the freedom to step back and let them create or use it how they want to. And that's kind of how that unstructured play plays into that. You'll see the picture number 1 on the top left side it's a box of dirt, seeds, clay pots, and some acorns that they found. And so this was during one of our garden studies. And, we have gardens on campus that the children are able to, but we can't go just garden all day, every day. So we made little mini garden boxes so they could still explore those concepts of planting and digging inside these boxes. Picture number 2, you'll see create a face. So these were blank templates of faces, and this was a scaffolded activity. So it started out with a picture of a face made with nature, and it identified, oh, this face looks happy, this face looks sad, this face looks excited. And then they kind of took loose parts and matched those items. Once they were kind of getting tired of that, but we were still interested in discussing emotions, we scaffolded it and moved to blank faces. So there was nothing on the face now, but we left the same loose parts out, and then they were able to create their own face and then identify, oh, this face I made is happy because you can see the way it has a smile, or this face is sad because it has sad eyebrows, or whatever the case was that they identified with in their emotions. Another example of an outdoor provocation, bottom left picture, is just watercolors and paint. We took out a little tray that held the watercolor and I said watercolor and paint, watercolor and water, that held those materials and the paintbrushes and papers for them to paint on. This was an activity that we were doing at the classroom, but it was time to go on our hike, but they weren't quite done exploring with it. So we just packed it up and took it along with us. And then we quickly ran out of paper and they were still wanting to paint. And one of the beautiful things about watercolor is it's washable. It washes right off. So we were able to find some rocks and sticks around and they painted those instead. And then they had unlimited rocks to be painting on. And then when the rain came, it washed it away. So it's still environmentally safe and also constantly allowed them different textures to explore different shapes, things that they wouldn't normally get from painting on a piece of paper. And then the bottom right corner is just kind of a typical mud kitchen setup. One of the local nurseries nearby was they were giving away their out of season plants. And so we picked some up and they were able to use those to explore. That day they were making medicines, they were making soups, and just with like native plants, but that were kind of getting out of season. So outdoor provocations should be 3 things. They should be inviting. That means they should be easily accessible, and the materials should be, there should be a variety of them. It should be child-led, the items that provoke play and curiosity that the children show interest in, but also are loose parts, so they don't have a specific way of being played with, and ideally involving nature, grass, leaves, flowers, water, rocks. This is, like I said, a great place to incorporate loose parts. It's also really nice to thrift different items. If you go to a thrift store, you can find any variety of loose parts, which we'll dive more into loose parts in just a minute. Do I have any questions before I keep going? Okay, if you want to go to the next slide, bringing nature in. Frequent access to safe spaces in nature may be limited. So, a core component of nature-based education is allowing children to lead their learning and teachers to be their guides, which is a part of the Montessori approach. And what I'll say about nature-based is I feel that it will bring in parts of Montessori, Reggio Emilia, Waldorf. While that's not the core of what we do, we're able to still kind of take pieces from that and bring them into nature. And so we want to honor the fact that not everybody has access to outdoor spaces in general, let alone maybe not safe spaces. School could be located next to a busy highway, could be in the middle of a city, and so having acres and acres of land is not an option. And so also want to provide opportunities to be able to bring nature in if that's the case. So in that top left corner is a group doing a pumpkin jack activity. If you haven't heard of the pumpkin jack activity, it's you take a pumpkin, you draw a little face on it, you cut open the top, and then you put it in an airtight container with soil. There's also a book that goes along with it called Pumpkin Jack, and it's about the decomposition process of a pumpkin. And they're able to watch as it decomposes, and then by the springtime, if it works out, I've only been successful one time doing it, you then get sprouts and are able to plant. You can plant those in your garden so that you have pumpkins come the fall. It's also a really great activity to use as a portfolio project. So we would have the kiddos draw a picture of Pumpkin Jack before we put him in the container. And then every month we would use magnifying glasses and sit down and they could draw a picture of what Pumpkin Jack looks like a month later. And for that kind of activity to help allow like their freedom of exploration, but also keep along the same theme of pumpkin and fall. We would just put out, if the pumpkin was only orange, we'd put out orange and then maybe some green. And then as he decomposed, we'd add browns and blacks and grays. And it's great because the kids get to see the way that Pumpkin Jack changes throughout the year. But then, as an adult, as a teacher and a parent, you can see how the child's development is changing as well. So, our little 3-year-olds, their Pumpkin Jack might just start out as a bunch of scribbles on the page. But then by the end of the year, you start to see shapes forming. You start to see maybe, oh, Pumpkin Jack has a face now. And so it provides that kind of data for us to be able to see in a way to assess the kids that they don't really know that they're being assessed. And then that top right picture, number 2, you can just bring in logs and tree cookies. We are a big fan of tree cookies, just pieces of a tree that are cut into little circles. And those are considered a loose part, and the kids can explore them. They can build them, they can paint them, they can use them as playing cards, or you can draw numbers and letters on them. And that's a way that you can bring nature inside if you aren't able to take yourselves outside. Picture number 3, another easy way is just a box of water and a bouquet of flowers. So on our picnic tables, we would set up bouquets of flowers in the middle every couple of weeks. And then as they started to die, we would replace them. But in a line with being conservation minded, we didn't want to just throw the flowers away. But they're also not native to our area, so we can't just throw them in the grass or in the dirt. So we cut them up and put them in sensory bins. Filled the bins with water, and they could use cups, explore, make, like I said, make the potions. Or taking flower stems, putting it in a box with scissors is a great cutting activity, and it's a great way to reuse the items that we already have. And then when we're done, whenever we use water, whenever we're done with it, we clean the little items out, the toys, whatever's left in it, and then dump that back into the grass and kind of show them that cyclical nature of being able to engage with nature. And then, of course, a very popular, very favorite STEM activity in the bottom right corner is taking a bouquet of white flowers and putting them in water with food coloring. And through osmosis, you get to see how the flower petals change colors, and it shows students how the water is drinking up the water to help it, or I'm sorry, how the flower is drinking up the water to help it grow and flourish. Okay, the next slide. So kind of the core of what we're talking about here are these 6 core principles. So as I mentioned earlier, I did the teacher training for nature-based education through the Association for Nature-Based Education. And so these core principles are taken from what I learned throughout that class. We talked about sit spots, loose parts, forts, fire, environmental stewardship, and risky play. The three we're really going to focus on today are going to be sit spots, loose parts, and environmental stewardship. But we'll briefly go over all of them. Next slide. Oh, I think my things got a little out of order, but that's okay. So forts. Children can engage in enriching multidimensional play experiences that nurtures both their cognitive and emotional development in a way that is natural and both natural and enjoyable. Forts can be made outdoors. They could also be made indoors. You can use sheets and pillows, or you can use wood and rocks. You might even use non-traditional spaces as forts and hideouts. A shed full of toys like you see in that bottom left picture that is used as a little fort and a little hideout for the kids. Again, mentioned earlier, is we always make sure that students are being safe, allowing them the freedom to explore, but also setting boundaries. So one of our boundaries for using that shed as a fort was that those doors don't get to close. This is not a fort that gets to be all the way enclosed, because for their safety, we just don't want the doors closing. And they were understanding of that, versus where we had and we're able to make forts with blankets and trees. They can kind of enclose themselves in because it's a little bit safer. And then obviously always having a teacher right next to them, so we're always having eyes on them and monitoring. Teacher intervention when it comes to building these forts should be as minimal as is developmentally appropriate, allowing students to learn through both trial and error. If they are kind of struggling to understand something, and it's very easy for teachers and adults to jump in and be like, okay, no, you need to do this way. This is how you can do it. But allowing them the autonomy to figure out and problem solve. You can ask them questions like, oh, or point things out and say, I noticed that when you put that blanket on top of that pile of sticks, it's too heavy for that pile of sticks. What can we do to make that a little bit stronger? And then they can come up with ideas so that we can guide them towards that answer. Forts are an element of risky play. They support gross motor development, teamwork, leadership, problem solving, emotional resilience, spatial development, a sense of pride, and self-control. Next slide. This is a nature school favorite, fire. Turn what might seem like a risky activity into a valuable learning experience, fostering skills and qualities that are beneficial far beyond childhood. Fire is great to develop risk assessment skills, to develop responsibility, respect, curiosity, confidence and independence, emotional regulation, self-resilience. We love fire play at nature school, and it's often one that's very nerve-wracking. Obviously, it comes with a very large risk. And so this is an activity that we always scaffold with students. We don't jump right into having fires, fire pits, things like that, but we start slow. We start by talking about fire safety. We invite the firefighters to come to school to tell us about fire safety. We teach them about fire rings, how they can set up fire rings using rocks, and then we practice in our outdoor spaces when we're playing, and we pretend play with fires, and we pretend to set up that fire ring and collect wood. And the things that we've discussed will help fire safety. And then we move to small fires. So you'll see in those two pictures in the top right and bottom left are just little tea light candles. So they're very small flame, much lower risk than a large like campfire. And the students this activity was done with 3 to 5-year-olds. And so once we understood fire safety, we made sure we had a glass of water, we had a hose nearby. We talked to the students about how when we're around fire, this is a space for us to have calm bodies. So when we had the tea lights out, this was not a space for us to be running. This was not a space to be very loud, because we need to be able to hear each other. And the 3 to 5-year-olds were able to dip paintbrushes into the melted wax and paint. We also talked about how melted wax, like the fire, can be very hot, so we need to be very mindful. And children are used to just sticking their paintbrush in the paint and painting, but we had to talk about how if you do that, you're going to either light your paintbrush on fire or put the fire out. And so we have to go in at an angle, and we need to hold the top of it firmly with our hand, but not too close to the fire, and then take it out to paint. which is a really fun activity. And like I said, it really helps develop their responsibility and a sense of respect for fire, but also for themselves and for others. And I feel like there's no other way to really no, there's no better way than to build their self-confidence in them than allowing them to explore safely with elements that are traditionally saved for adults. Any questions on fire or forts or anything I've talked about? Yes, yes. Also great for proprioceptive system exercises. It's really like an all-around wonderful opportunity. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Sit spots. This is one of my personal favorites. So sit spots should be intentional, but allow children the freedom to also explore. They provide a unique opportunity to connect profoundly with nature. You can witnessing its delicate transformations and cultivating a sense of unity, appreciation, and stewardship for the world. So in the four pictures that we have on the slide, the top left corner these are all in respectively the same area at the Cibolo Creek in Bernie. The top left picture, it was taken in the summertime, and you'll see the reflection of the sun on the water, the bright green leaves, and then you move to the right picture to the right, and you see, okay, the leaves are kind of falling, things are turning brown and orange. This is in the fall. Bottom left corner, now it's not as bright, it's a little gloomy, and there's no leaves on the trees. This is winter. And then full circle again. In the bottom right picture, you see it's a little bit brighter. There are green leaves on the trees. And so like I said, relatively the same spot at the creek, but able to see in a year all this transformation that we see every day. And when it happens so gradually and slow. And so when you're able to sit down and document and spend time in that space, you're really able to appreciate the changes that come along with it. For our littlest ones, sit spots might look like encouraging them to explore space with their senses, walking around quietly, taking some deep breaths, using their eyes to explore, using their hands, using their ears to listen, their sense of smell to smell, probably not tasting nature, not ideal. But then coming together as a group and verbally reflecting and partaking in mindfulness to notice, okay, when we were at this space, what are things we saw? What did we find? Did we find any treasures? What would we like to share? For older ones, it may be exploring as a group through senses, but then coming together and sharing their observations in a deeper way, to help create a deeper understanding of how the world works and how things are changing. For even older kiddos, allowing them to kind of choose their spot to sit for an extended period of time, and practicing stillness and reflection independently. This could be for all ages, it could be done through journaling. For our littlest ones, they could be drawing pictures. For the older ones, they could have an actual journal and just be jotting down thoughts or things that they notice. So one thing about sit spots is it's really an area and a time for mindfulness. So we emphasize a lot of taking deep breaths and just listening and allowing time for stillness, which in the world that we live in today, time for stillness is just not something that we're given very often. And so it can be really good to reset our entire system. The next one. Loose parts. We've talked about these a little bit. Also, I think I've said this a couple times, but another favorite part of nature-based education is the loose parts. Loose parts are open-ended materials that children transport, combine, and use to design and invent play scenarios or artistic creations. Using loose natural materials as playthings allows children to construct their learning while reaping the benefits of nature engagement. Loose parts are anything that can be anything, any item. So if you think of a baby doll is pretty much a baby doll. It can't turn into a car, it can't turn into a sword, it's just a baby doll. A stick, on the other hand, like we talked about, a stick can be a baby doll. A stick can be a sword. It can be a building block. It can be a writing utensil. It can be all sorts of things. Um, So in the top left picture, number one, the students are playing with those tree cookies we talked about, and they're using leaves and sticks as cutting and imprinting tools with Play-Doh. Picture number two, they're using more flowers to paint and using the flowers as paintbrushes. And so they're able to notice how different things look when you paint with a paintbrush versus painting with a flower. The flower could be used in their potions, but now it's a paintbrush. It could also be used for the STEM activities or just as decoration on our tables. Sensory bins with dyed rice, magnets, foam pieces, and cups, just a variety of loose parts, and seeing kind of what the students want to do with it. What I always say is if I find an item, like I get a package and it has cardboard pieces and block looking things in it, or I'm at a thrift store and I find something, if I can't think of a reason, or something to an idea to use it for, that doesn't mean that the kids can't. The children are so much more creative than I am. And so I enjoy kind of just putting loose parts out in the provocations and seeing what they do and how they explore with them. Students have used the little drink carriers. They've used those as paint to paint them, just as another painting tool. They've used them as a building block. They've used them as drink carriers and a variety of things. Using old CDs, flashlights, light table plastic pieces, and clear cups, students were able to create colors and puppet shows and experiment with light. Students can use paper towel rolls, they can cut up pool noodles, they can use these items to create ramps and transporters for marbles. That bottom left picture is nature that's left over from sensory bins, put on a light table and used as shadows, reflection. We had some students that were drawing it using as a sample image for them for their art. Some really good resources, which I'll talk more about some loose parts resources at the end, but I wanted to share are, oh, it might be blurry. Well, I have pictures of it at the end to show you, but there's loose parts book, 3 loose parts books, loose parts inspiring play in young children, inspiring play with infants and toddlers, and inspiring culturally sustainable environments. Those are really great resources. Let me see if I can. The book just goes through and shows different loose parts items. Okay, next slide. Environmental stewardship. We're working with nature. It's really, really important. Our ecosystem is very fragile. And so we want to impart with children the idea to not leave a trace. We can use nature, we can play with nature, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're not leaving a human footprint behind. And what that looks like often in the classrooms is kids love to collect nature treasures. They love collecting shells. They love collecting rocks and sticks and leaves. And so we talk about when we, some things we want to enjoy with our eyes when we're outdoors, when we're outside playing. We can use 2 gentle touching fingers to touch the flower petals or to touch leaves on trees, but we don't want to be picking it off of the tree because that hurts the tree. It hurts the bugs and the birds and everything that lives and uses the tree. And so we kind of had the rule of depends on your age group, but rule of 100. So if you can't find 100 of them, then there's not enough for us to take. For our really little ones, they can't quite count up to 100. So we talk about usually if there's like 10 or 12, or if there's more than you can count, then you can take 1 or 2 and be able to use that. And just kind of reminding them that while it's fun to use nature and enjoy it, it also has a deeper meaning and a deeper purpose than just for our enjoyment. Um, Environmental stewardship can be implemented regardless of how much access to nature is available. You can sort recycling and sort recycling materials. You can reuse materials. You can go clean up trash even in the classroom. And you can monitor paper towel and water usage. You can bring in small towels to do everyday cleaning rather than using paper towels or providing reusable napkins at snack or lunch times. Tending to a garden or plants inside of a classroom can also show children the importance of environmental stewardship. They don't have to go outside to have a garden. You can have a clay pot with a plant in it, and the students can care for that and just set it in the window. Even if you can't go outside and have a full-on garden, there's still ways to have it inside. One of our teachers, I didn't get a picture of it, but she reused a dresser drawer she found a dresser on the side of a road on a bulk pickup day that didn't only had one drawer to it. So she took the drawer and she um, drilled holes in the bottom so it could the water could flow out, but then oh my gosh, sorry, planted soil in it. They had done the experiment with beans, and they propagated the beans, and then they planted the beans. And now that little drawer garden is sitting inside their classroom. Next slide. Risky play, the thrilling and exciting form of unstructured play that opens children's experiences up to uncertainty of outcome and possible for physical injury. This is often a really hard one for adults. It's very easy for us to want to say, oh, be careful, but not provide any detailed explanation to children of why they should be careful. For heights, studies show that 54% of injuries this was done in a study of 27,000 children, occurred below the 59-inch mark. And only 46% of injuries of heights occurred above that mark. So children were more likely to get hurt when they were lowered down. And that's often because they're lower to the ground, so they think they're safer. So they play it a little bit riskier. But if they're a little bit higher up, they're like, okay, I'm a little off the ground. I need to pay a little more attention to what I'm doing. And throughout that study, which is cited at the very bottom, on the bottom of the slide, no injuries occurred to the head and spine in that 1 year span of the study. So while there were injuries, there was nothing that was major or super life-threatening when children are exploring with heights. Speed helps children develop an understanding of their bodies in space and helps prepare them to mitigate risk better than their peers. So when children are running around with like the dump trucks, they're running real fast, and they have to learn to stop, and they have to learn to get going, and that momentum, how to turn corners, and if someone is coming at them, they can't keep running, how they need to stop their body, and that sense of self-control. Adult tools, confidence development, using adult tools helps develop confidence in children, and it lowers the likelihood of serious injury when they're taught safety skills young. So when we keep children from using drills or hammers, they're not going to be prepared when they get older to use it. But when they're younger, they develop the confidence, they learn the safety skills, and they do it with an adult. So they know that they're in a safe space where they're going to be cared for if something were to happen. And adult can kind of control how they're used. Natural elements. Children are more likely to face their fears. They have a resilience to obstacles and a deeper understanding of the way the world works whenever they're able to explore natural elements. For me, my biggest one was snakes. I used to not even be able to look at a picture of a snake. And then I started working at the zoo school, and we had to visit the snakes very often at the zoo. It was a favorite in the hippo house. And now at the school I'm at, one of our classrooms has a ball python. And while I still can't quite bring myself to touch it, I'm much more comfortable with it now. And so being able to explore these natural elements allows children to kind of face those fears. And we don't want to implement our own fears onto kids. Rough and tumble play tends to be a tough one, tends to be a little bit nerve-wracking too. But studies show that 32% of children are more likely to show competence in interpersonal cognitive problem solving, and it's not correlated with an increased frequency of aggressive behaviors. We had a group of kiddos that was really, really rough, really into the rough and tumble play. And when we watched their play, we noticed that they were talking a lot about ninjas. Come to find out, one of the students had just started, not karate, jujitsu class. And so that was something that was prevalent in their everyday life, and they were bringing that into school. And of course, we had to set some boundaries surrounding that, but it was a great opportunity to kind of look at their play and see that they weren't intentionally trying to be mean to each other, but they're playing a game, and it's easy to look at children playing and be like, oh, no, don't do that, let's stop. But it's important that we take a minute to step back, take a breath, and watch them and see maybe what the purpose of what are they seeking? What are they trying to what need are they trying to meet? The risk of disappearing or getting lost. Children are 1.5 times more likely to play outside every day when they have the opportunity to get lost. Like I said, when I felt in our little loop-de-loop situation, we felt like we were lost, like we were disappearing. My mom could absolutely see us from the porch, so we were still always safe. But we felt like we had that space to be away and just be ourselves. Any questions of what I've talked about so far? We have a few more minutes. Um, okay, if you want to go to the next slide. Um, there's not a whole lot of us, so we don't need to do breakout rooms. But if anyone brought any materials, if you received the materials list, this would be the time to use them. I usually at the end of these sessions give us some time to have a moment of stillness, moment of calming, kind of making sure that we're in this moment. We have, especially on a Saturday, we have so many things we want to do and so many places we want to be and things to get done, but to kind of take a moment for ourselves, to just be. And then after that, we were going to do use loose parts if you brought, like I said, if you brought those items to inspire some creativity and see what you guys could create with the loose parts that you guys brought. So if you guys are interested, we could do that. If not, I can skip to the last slide. I'll show you some materials that I brought. Um, Cardboard, some tree cookies, found some sticks and rocks of different sizes. And another favorite loose part is PVC pipes. These can be used for water play, they can use for building, they can be used for all sorts of things. And so these are kind of just some examples of loose parts that can be used. Like I said, to me, this is a stick, but to a kid, this might be a pencil, it might be a sword. This is a piece of cardboard that came from a box that I had. It could be used for children to paint on, it could be used for children to draw on. They could fold it, they could make it into a little book. You can make it into a little fort to put little people inside of. The PVC pipe, like I said, they could build with it. They could practice pouring water. They could practice pouring dirt, and they can experiment with, okay, is the water going to come out here? Is it going to come out here? How is that going to work? Yeah, so that is the last of what I had. And then my last slide, if you want to share that. Are just some resources. So it shows that those loose parts books, loose parts 1, 2, and 3, as well as a list of natural and reused or recycled loose parts. The Honeycomb Hypothesis, that book is really, really good if you're working with infants and toddlers. And then 1,000 Hours Outside provides a lot of outdoor activities to be used for older kiddos. A favorite book in the nature-based community is the Nature-Based Preschool Professional Practice Guidebook from Natural Start. Then there's the Organic Artist for Kids that shows different ways of using art methods, how to create paint from natural materials, how to create writing utensils, different things. And then the Sensory Playbook for toddlers and preschoolers provides a lot of examples of different sensory experiences for bins and activities with kids. So yeah, that's everything from me. If anyone has any last minute questions or anything you'd like to share.
We've got a comment from Kim. Her mic isn't working, so I'll read it for her. Thank you so much for this. These are great resources. We have a thriving pumpkin jack in our school garden right now. Half of our school is Montessori. One preschool class did this, and our traditional fifth grade class too. Our administration values recess and outdoor learning. Our school is over 100 years old, and we are blessed with mature oak trees on our playground. This was not the case when I taught in public school serving underserved populations. It is unfortunate that we have to teach this way. I have work at a private school where I have more autonomy.
Yes, first of all, I love that you have a thriving pumpkin jack. I'm very proud of you. That's can be a little tricky, so that's amazing. And I'm glad that the kids get to experience that. It is really unfortunate that this is how we have to teach. I'm glad that this experience is out there, but the goal is to make it more accessible to all groups of children because, as we know, the way education's going right now, it's not sustainable and it's not developmentally appropriate for children. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Emily, this is a very specific question, and if we need to talk offline, that's fine.
Mhm.
So I'm potentially teaching a class next spring for university students who would be part like childhood play and part with our makerspace. Their challenge to be to build something
Mhm.
by the end. And so we wanted it to be something that particular semester it'll be focused on an outdoor learning environment. But we want kids to be able to kind of pick what that might be. Can you think of any like built structures? So I'm thinking like mud kitchen, um, small stage, something like that. Are
Mhm.
there other things that you can think of that would be somewhat easy builds for students who haven't built anything before, but that would be utilized in an early childhood setting? And that anybody can answer in the chat too.
And you're wanting them to build these items?
Yeah, the
You were saying?
university students
Okay.
will build the items for the outdoor learning environments for the school.
We had a group of Boy Scouts build us picnic tables
Hmm.
that have been really utilized. We have like adult sized and then some kid sized ones, which have been really, really awesome. We have a mud kitchen as well. I'm trying to think. Let me think about it and I will get back
Yeah,
to you though, because
yeah, I
I'm
know
very
it's very
interested.
specific. So I just thought if there's anything off the top of your head, I'd pick your
Yeah.
brain.
Great. Thanks, y'all. I put a few things in the chat. One is our evaluation. So if you could fill that out, all of us here are educators. We know how important evaluation is. Our next webinar is evidence-based landscape design for a whole child model. So we'd love to have you join for that. And then we have our Pathfinders, which is specifically for early childhood. We've got lots of great resources like Emily shared. So if you haven't had a chance to become a Pathfinder yet, we would love for you to join. Um, so Kim said at a former job they had students build a stump jump. So for you, Courtney.
Thanks.
Hey. Thank you so much, Emily. Really appreciate your time this Saturday morning. I hope everyone gets a chance to enjoy this beautiful spring day. Spend some time outside, and thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.